coming from like a game development myself, you have no idea how many of my friends want to create their own game engine. Yeah. So let's move on to the next section, which is the development of J. So you did already explain about like your pet peeve about visual novels, but what are the elements that make a great visual novel?
Okay, we already explained the one that I think is really important, and I don't think just for visual novels actually. In general, respect the player's time. Do not feel that you need to fill your visual novel with words because the most famous one are these long, enormous things. Take a concept, think of the characters, think of the settings, and make the story as long or as short as that concept needs it to be. That's it. Don't try and go overboard because you need some kind of arbitrary quota because you need to make it as big as other visual novels. Give it the length and the pacing that your story needs. That's one of the two most important elements, not just for visual novels. I think for writing in general, for any media, I can't stress this enough. Respect people's time and pace it very well. Then, of course, with visual novels, not just with the verbose ones, also with improved ones, don't feel that you need to always stick with the main character. Because that's the thing, most visual novels, the main character be this very blank slate that the player can be more easily be put in the shoes of. If you play JPD, you can tell that that's not the case with David.
Yeah.
Like he has a canon name and you can rename it, but most of the time is its own person. It develops along a certain line, and the player doesn't have a lot of input into how he develops as a person, and that's on purpose. And because of that, there is also the thing, I have a lot of scenes where David is not in. There are characters that can have their personal scenes, they can interact with other characters without David being anywhere near them. And that's a thing that most stories can take advantage of. Give characters moments, relationships that don't involve the main character, the player character. And I think your stories will be stronger for it because it means that your characters can carry scenes and storylines by themselves and you have more variety. It makes for a strong story. And finally, again, don't be afraid of the visual part. It's a visual novel, I understand, but you don't need to just write. If you want to do something with the sprites, with the sound, the music, with some gameplay, do it. Just because they're visual novels doesn't mean that all the strength, all the effort has to go just into the writing. You want to experiment with everything else, do it.
So who helps you develop the game?
Oh, a lot of people. Most of my teams actually are regulars. They are people that I've been collaborating with literally since day one. Bunny Void, which is my background artist, and now she's the sprite artist, background sprite tiles artist for JPD2. Then there is Amako, who does all the sprites for JPD1, and now is doing the concept art for JPD2. And then there is Sadui, which makes basically most of the CGs for JPD1, and now she's making them for JPD2 as well. And finally, there's Arsonic Arts, who has done a few CGs for JPD1, and now is making all the character sprites for JPD2. And these are the people that I collaborated with from day one. Then, of course, there are others like they are collaborating with for less time, but not less regularly, like Odd Till the End, which is one of the composers, Project Trinity, also a composer, Choco Jax, which makes the on-screen sprites for the characters in JPD2, made some CGs for JPD1. And that's the thing, there are a lot of people, there's a list on our main website, jpde.art, and the thing is, I work with them regularly. And I think that I cannot stress it enough, if you find someone talented that you work well with, keep that relationship going through time, because you both reap the benefits as you both get better at your craft. Keep your team close.
Let's talk about the design of the combat mechanic. So how do you design the combat mechanic, and is there any inspiration from other games?
Oh boy. Okay, we're talking JPD 1 or 2 here, because if you're talking JPD 1, the combat mechanics are sadly very basic, because again, before starting JPD, I knew I wanted to put some combat mechanics in, but the thing is that RWBY as an engine is not very good for designing that kind of systems. So I do my best, basically. That's how I design it. It's inspired from turn-based JRPGs. Because of RWBY, I cannot even give it a real initiative system. So it's very limited in what I can do. It's I have to say the combat in JPD is the weakest part of the experience. I think a lot of people can agree with that. In JPD2, in fact, when we switch to another engine, it's been so liberating. I can take inspiration from so many more things. There are so many plugins. The community for RPG Maker MZ is so vast. So many things I can do, especially combat-wise, and I couldn't be more relaxed because it doesn't take that long to code a single fight anymore. That's also why in JPD there are so little fights, because programming them is a mess. But at the same time, because of the setting, because of the story, I could not avoid putting a fight system in the game.
Even though that like you were saying that the combat system is actually like the weakest link in Jade, it still makes the game a lot better, because imagine if you're going into Burrito and there is no fight in there, just like a full like
Exactly.
2 hours of text.
Exactly, and that's my point. It takes a bit, but I couldn't not have a fighting system in the game because of the story, because of the setting, because of the spacing. I needed some gameplay, fighting gameplay in the story, especially in video games. There are limits to how you can describe fighting. It takes so much effort. At that point, just put a fighting system in. It can be limited, but just put it in.
Would you agree that explaining fight scenes like blow by blow is kind of boring in text?
Yes. Yes, you can explain well certain moments, certain flourishes maybe, but I've tried writing fight scenes. I've seen a lot of fan fictions writing fight scenes, and some of them are pretty good. But again, either you do it in a visual style and you put onomatopoeias and stuff like that into the writing, but at that point it's not really a classic novel anymore. We make video games, you can make fight systems. Just do that. Just do that.
About the limitations of RWBY, is that the reason why you want to port from RWBY to Unity back then in Jade 1?
Yeah, that was the plan at the beginning, but that fell through. Lightboom, which was a Unity programmer, that guy is a genius. Like I have never seen someone pick up so many elements and codes with a new engine as he did so fast. But then basically got a job offer, actual game development company, so he didn't live in time to be with the team anymore. So when he went away, of course, that fell through, and so did other stuff. I really would have liked to port JPD to Unity, but that's not a feasible option anymore. We just don't have the manpower and all, and someone who actually understands Unity, because learning to code it's a skill that takes time to learn and perfect, and depending on your attitude, it can take even more. I personally don't have the attitude for, let's say, hard coding softwares engines like Unity. I'm more at ease with stuff like RPG Maker MZ and RWBY. With stuff like Unity is that they're playgrounds. You can do whatever you want, but the problem is to do whatever you want, you need to learn how to do it. Instead, other engines like RWBY and RPG Maker MZ, you can do these things really well. If you want to go outside that scope, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
So I prefer the second kind of engines. I have I just work better with those. Like I pick something I want to do very well. I take that engine. Great.
That's actually a good advice for like a lot of people as well, because if the tools is already available, then just take it and run with it. Coming from like a game development myself, you have no idea how many of my friends want to create their own game engine. Yeah. Well, there is like some financial reasons to it, like
Well, yeah,
the
of course.
Unity cards, like all the Unreal kind of cards. But really, one person wants to create a game engine.
At a certain point, you had to decide, because both money, but of course also your time is a valuable resource. So you had to, should I invest, spend a lot, a few of the cuts to save on the time to learn something, or and create something, because creating an engine, you had to make that decision. I personally prefer to go, like already doing so many things at once, learning another engine from scratch, one as complex as Unity or Unreal. No.
Now, this is a big question here. So, what is your workflow or the process of making a new route in Jade?
Well, first of all, of course, it needs to be voted for, because the way it works with JPD, we have the Patreons. There are some tiers that have nomination power. So when they ask, what do you want to nominate for the poll this month? And then all the patrons vote for it. And then when it's time to start a new route, I think about what kind of route would make the most sense to happen for the character, and what I, as a writer, want to write about with the character. I need to strike a balance of it. Still needs to be something that fits the character's personality and backstory, but it also needs to be something that I have to find interesting to write about. For example, when I had to go into Emerald, now I'm writing the fourth event for that route, I figured out, what do I want to write about? The character is, of course, like a hard nails, very loyal to her employer and things like that. So I won't say, I think that what would be interesting would be going a little into her backstory, because we got, I remember in the original RWBY series, we got a small flashback of an offer that we got some hints, but I feel like that there could be some bigger backstory to cover. Not fully, because that's a pet peeve of mine. You don't need to over-explain stuff. That's a way detrimental. But I think that that's an aspect that I want to explore, because it was interesting to me. Then I write it. I just the thing is, it's not just a route. It's also for the story. This is more about into my writing style in general, actually. When I write, I don't have everything planned out from the beginning. I'm not an ironclad writer. I think that's the term. Anyway, but I don't also do whatever comes to mind. I'm not a seat of the pants writer either. What I have are some bits, let's call it these flags, that they're checkpoints on a long route, on a marathon. First checkpoint, second checkpoint, third checkpoints. I remind, at this checkpoint this happens, at this one this happens, this other one that happens, and the space in between is space that I feel as a right. Basically, how I feel and how I feel the character would act in those situations. I feel that this kind of balance allows me a lot of liberty to put in stuff that I can't think of from the beginning, without any input. But at the same time, it gives me some limits, some restriction, an area between which to keep myself in. That's why I approach all writing. I think of some flags, and then I fill the space in between the flags.
And then I assume that you're going to code it first.
I actually do both at the same time, actually.
Oh, wow.
I write it as I code it. Even if it happens that I'm away from my main computer and write something else, and I have access to a coding software, I write it in Word, but I write it as I would with the codes, with all the the inputs, the brackets that you need to write that kind of stuff. So I write everything as I code it, because that's what I mean when earlier I said that fanfics and writing for a visual novel are two different things. It's not just about the style of writing, but also the way I actually write. Because now I have enough confidence to write dialogues and description directly into the code. I don't write everything on a Word and then I translate it into code. I write as I code.
So that means when you're coding, or I guess writing the story, then you have to like imagine the animations of the sprite in your head.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I do. I imagine the animations because by now I've been using RWBY for 5 years. So yes, I imagine what the characters would do, the timing of the animations, the intro, the music. That's what I do. I imagine the scene and then I translate it into code. Again, it's the same thing. That's what I meant when I say the writing fan fiction for anime helped me prepare myself for this kind of stuff because I'm used since I was 14 to think of something visuals and translating it into written word or code. Of course, play test while I code. I don't see the how you say the final product just when it goes out to people. But I enough confidence now with my writing and coding that I don't do it as frequently as one would expect.
When does the CG and the music coming into?
Okay, basically the way I plan this is more less about coding and design and more about producing. I suddenly realized, wait a minute, am I a producer now? Like I was like, oh wait, it's a continuous validation. Okay, I'm writing. Wait, am I directing now? Wait, am I producing now? What happens is that the people vote for the dates and the CGs. So now I call my artists, my collaborators. Okay, I need this CG for this date that needs to be put into the scene. Then I need this background track that is about this and goes like that, and I need it for this deadline. So while I write, the artists work on the pieces. And then I put them into the scenes. If I go forward, I just use placeholders. Then when I get to the final product, I put it into the game. So yeah, that goes into producing because I think that what a producer does, I believe, is keep everything on a set schedule. There are some time limitations need to be met, and you need to coordinate so that everyone can do their job with peace of mind, knowing that the others are also doing them, and then by this deadline, everything comes together. A producer needs to be that person that coordinates the team and gives everyone peace of mind because they can trust in him to make everything converge together in time for whatever your release window is.
Granted, though, usually when you have producers in a game company, they are usually dedicated on the schedules and timelines. They're not coding the game in the sidelines.
Yeah, exactly. Again, usually producers are just that producer. They don't also do directing or writing, with one big exception right now in the mainstream, which I can think of is Naoki Yoshida, which is both the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. And has been since it got given the game in 2.0 to literally bring it back from the ashes. And now they're releasing the final expansion of the first arc of the story, and that's the big example I can think of. So yeah, usually it doesn't happen. I can do it because it's there are smaller projects, smaller teams, and our kind of development cycle is different because we release monthly updates and we're supported by Patreon, so we don't need to meet deadlines for fiscal quarters or whatever. So I can do that. I believe that a bigger level is more difficult, but still, we have had so many examples lately in the last years of producers higher ups in development comments not knowing what the hoot they're doing. And we find out about the dozens of crunch hours, schedules that are not respected, people that don't know what the right hand doesn't know what the left hand does because the head is somewhere else, or they put unreasonable expectations. Now more than ever, it seems like we don't have many great producers in the game industry, and I think that's why a lot of high-profile subjects have suffered.
Yeah, that's why I quit my game producer job, really.
Ooh.
No, not exactly. I mean, like that was my internship, really. And when an internship kind of ends, I was not offered like the job, and I don't really like the job anyway. It's kind of boring.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So, how do you direct the art direction, like the character expression, the CG, and the background?
Okay, first of all, I think of the scene that needs to be made, of course. Okay, I need this scene for this route because this is going to happen. Basically, I think of the story of the scene and I think of the most pivotal moment. Basically, I want this CG to be about this scene because it exemplifies what's happening. Then I make a sketch. I don't know if they can really see the colors on this one. This is a sketch of the, whoops. That was a sketch of the scene where Penny in the main story goes basically Super Saiyan against Team Thunder. So I make that scene, that sketch. It can be more or less detailed depending on the scene. Then I send it to my artist with a set of instructions and to how the character is going to look, what's happening, the expression, the feeling of the scene. It's the same with the sprites, with the difference is that I don't really do sketches, but I do give references because I find that when it comes to designing some stuff, if I try and give some very specific instructions, the end result is not as good and is if I give some guidelines and then let the artist do their thing. I feel like that leaving the artist to do what they know how to do best is better for the end result. Same for the background. I can give some reference, I can give some instructions, but I don't do, okay, this needs to be this high, this needs to be this yellow, this needs to be this deep. No, I give instructions, I give guidelines, but the artists, they know much better than me how to do certain things and what goes better with what, color, depth, whatever. I let them do what they do best in peace. That's our approach art.
So what about the area backgrounds? Because in Final Festival and also in Burrito, there is like multiple places where you decided that you need places and you need images there. So how do you decide that?
For Burrito and for the Vital Festival, Amity Festival, is they're two different things. Like they were two different processes. Like for example, for Burrito, what happened is that I wanted, basically, I came up with the location. I described it, I came up with the lore, with the background, and I gave that to my artist. This needs to be like somewhere between this biome and this other biome. It needs to be a bit alien because it needs to be scary, etc. And but the thing is, I had some ideas in mind for scenes, but none of them had needed a very specific location. So what I did, make an enormous forest, make it big, and then I will decide what location needs for which scene. I adapted what I'm given, with one exception, because the mission happened because Evelyn crashed a transport into the forest, so I needed that thing to be there. Otherwise, the rest of the forest, I left it to Bunny Void, with of course some guidelines, but yeah. Instead for Amity, the Amity Arena, Vital Festival, that was different because, okay, so basically this is a stadium. It's a floating stadium. Okay, we need the arena, we need the seats, but then we need somewhere where transports can land, because otherwise how can people go from the ground to the floating island? Then they need some rest areas, because if the match lasts an entire day, what if someone wants to eat? What if someone wants to go to the bathroom? What if someone wants to take a break? Okay, but then in that break area, you need some screens, because maybe they want to take a break away from the crowd, but still want to watch the fights, etc., etc., etc. So I went to all the details that a location like that needed to have, the places, and then I gave them to Bunny Void. And then she recreated them with some references, like what from the show and also from the real world, because yeah, there are some scenes that were completely original in the arena, especially from RWBY. So yeah, depending on the place and what they're going to be used for, the details they need, the process of telling my artist what I need is different, of course.
From what I understand, all of the backgrounds are actually like 3D models, right?
Yeah, for Jade, yes, they were all 3D models, exactly, yes. Bunny Void, she's amazing. She comes from an architectural background.
Oh.
So what happened is that the oldest backgrounds for jpde, which is also why we can't really replace them or modify them, because we would have to do them from the ground up again, were made in a actual software they use for architects. Then she moved into Blender and Unreal, that kind of stuff. So yes, they were all 3D models, and then she gives me renders or certain visuals, point of views in the 3D models, and then I use those as backgrounds for JPD, yes.
So on the angles of which those pictures are taken, do you decide on them like when you explore the game itself, or do you entirely leave it to her?
Some I do, because again, there are some scenes like I need this kind of a point of view because they're going to be working here, so it can be just aerials. But most of them, yes, I leave to her, and then I use them with the scene. Again, the flag and the empty space in between. For the flags, I need some specific backgrounds maybe. For the in-between, give me what you have, and then I do whatever I want.
Okay, we talk about art, and now how do you direct the music direction?
This has actually been an evolving process. I am a fan of music. I also try to do some music by myself with varying results. But when I first started with JPD, I used copyright free packs. Basically, I bought these packs from RPG Maker or other things. I downloaded them and I put them in the game, used them for the game. For example, Evelyn's team in JPD is from a pack. Like, I didn't commission anyone. Then I started realizing that not all the stuff that I used for the game fit the scenes I wanted in mind. So I started getting in contact with composers, first with Project Trinity, then with Odd Deal The End. And I started thinking, how do I describe what I want? And again, I started doing it the same way I did it for art, but the difference is that there I described, okay, this scene is going to be used in the background, this kind of this music is going to be used in the background, this scene, and it needs to evoke this feeling. Then the more I got into the process, the more I got confident about, okay, so this needs to be this long, these sections need to be 4, because these are about 4 characters. Like for the team of Team Indigo, I remember that was a moment, okay, I'm actually producing a music track here. Because I describe, okay, this is about a team. So when you go into the verse needs to be split into 4 distinct sections, because each distinct section is about a different member of Team Indigo. And then the chorus sound like fans chanting their names, and this sentence from the you know, from the stadium. So like I got more confident now. Basically, what I do with the music is, okay, this background music piece is going to be for this scene, for this kind of locale. It needs to evoke this feeling. Okay, here the intro should be a little shorter because it takes too much of the overall time, etc., etc. It came to the point that there is the final song in Jade, Dreams of Jade, with the vocals of Anna Pansu, which is a very good cover and just a singer in general. You can find her on YouTube. She was great. And what I did is I came out with the song, I came out with the structure, I came out with the feeling, and I also wrote down the lyrics. That was the very first time I ever wrote lyrics for someone else, and I really liked it. I think I want to do that more.
Right, and you will have many more opportunities in J2. I hope. All right.
You have no idea.
Oh, is that a little tease right there?
I'm not saying anything.
And the thing that I love the most about like game music or like movie music, right, is that some of the characters actually have the leitmotifs, like their own theme, right? And it is very, very obvious when you have your partner or like the one that you take into the date fight someone else, and you can see like the music are the combinations of those two themes together.
Exactly. Yes, that's something I love. Again, referencing Final Fantasy 14, Masayoshi Soken, which is the main music artist for Final Fantasy 14, is a master of that kind of stuff. Referencing Jade, I really like, for example, what we did with the RWBY versus Penny background music track, the music from Penny's team that you heard more times during the game. For example, when she first goes Terminator against Tilla, and we fused her leitmotifs with the leitmotifs from Red Like Roses, and until the end is with this very good mashup of the two characters fighting each other. So I really like when that kind of stuff happens as well.
Yeah, it really good. It is one of the best moments, I think. We have a question from Anonymous here about the music. How much has the game's music factored into your creative process?
A lot, in the sense that, again, we're talking about translating something visual into something code-wise. So again, when I think of certain scenes, I also think of the kind of music that I want in the background, if I want music at all, because I'm also not afraid of silence in certain scenes. I think that can be also useful. And yeah, like what happens is that sometimes when I imagine the scene and I write it down, I also imagine the kind of music. Well, of course, I don't have the music track already created in my brain, but I imagine other tracks I already heard of playing in the background, so I know the feeling. And I also have some references I can give to my music artist when I was, hey, and this track to sound like this. So yeah.
Since Jade just recently got voice acting, how do you direct the voice actors?
Yeah, and that's actually a new one. Again, that's another skill that I'm learning, because voice directing is another skill. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay, first of all, I am lucky in the sense that I'm directing and giving them lines from something that is already a game. So they can already see the expression of the characters, they can see how they interact with each other, they can see the background music, the feelings, so they can understand what the scene is going, what the scene is, what's happening in the scene, so they can have some emotional direction from the videos. That's why I actually use your videos a lot. Your videos for all the playthrough, what I do is, okay, there is this scene, and you can see in this video from this point to this point what happens, and I link them, and I need you to voice these lines that are in this part. And that's very useful. Then, of course, I also give them some instructions about what's happening in the scene and the relationship between characters. And another thing, though, is that I noticed that, again, stuff that needs to be voice acted cannot be written. Like, it can be written as you would write a novel, because people need to breathe. In real life, people need a moment of pause. And that's actually what I found. Okay, the voice actress for Evelyn, by the way, is called Su-Ling Chan. And she's absolutely amazing. And when she first submitted her application to the casting call, I was like, why does this person with this so much experience want to voice Evelyn? But she does. She's doing it. And it's great. And I know this, I was a bit... She gave me back some, some takes. Then I go over if there is something that needs a second take or anything. And I'm like, okay, this needs another take because the sentence is too long. She cannot say that sentence while keeping the voicing characters at the same time. So that's another skill I had to learn. I had to go through the sentences, give instructions, references, but you also need to read the lines to voice act are actually voice actable. Yeah, that's another thing I had to keep in mind, another thing that I'm learning, and it's a very interesting process.